there, everybody. It's Wayne D. Welcome to the website. It's WayneD.com. Today we're going to look at the swing of Peter Slavin. Peter is from Chicago. I'm in Chicago, and we're out at Olympia Fields where he plays. And these are the swings that we started with. Let you watch those a couple times. Peter had a nice summer. We've been working together for a couple of years off and on. And he had a top 10 in the Illinois State Mid-Am. Came pretty close to qualifying for the U.S. Amateur and qualified for the State Am. So Peter's coming up in the competitive world. He's 32, didn't really play in college, but he's got a lot of talent, and he's getting better. He's interested in working on the swing for sure. So I'm going to show you a few of the things that we worked on. So we'll start with the face on, and we'll go slow-mo, and I'll show you what I see and what I recommended. So if you look at these two setups, even before I draw any lines, one of the things you might notice is it doesn't look like his hips are quite as forward. So when I check out centeredness, so it's always important to have the camera right in front of the golf ball. So when I check out that centered, I like to have everything even at address. I just think it's a better place to start from rather than having the upper and lower body leaning in either direction. So if we look at the setup here, the big thing is if you look at where the pelvis is, you'll see an equal amount on each side of the vertical lines I draw up from the heels, while over here you'll see that the hips are obviously pushed a bit forward. So when you move the hips back, his head went a little bit back, but ball position being not really that far forward of center, he's not that far behind it in that situation. So let's take a look at these two swings and see what the consequences of recentering the lower body are. So when the lower body starts off pushed forward like that, the tendency, if you're going to load to the right, and since Peter has a tendency to not to move at all off the ball, and then to back up his head in the forward swing, he's always had a tendency to swing from the inside and exit out to the right. So let's take a peek and see what that change might have done. So what I was suggesting after watching the swing on the left here, take a look. So you'll see in an attempt to load right, which is what we've been working on, with the hips pushed forward in order to feel like the right side loads, you can see that we've got a fairly significant amount of hip slide. So he's going to have to recover that loss there. Now you see we did succeed in getting the upper body to load a little bit more. And now when he starts down, we'll look at the amount of lateral. That's a little weak on that part, and if you look at where his head is as he gets to the ball, look how far back it has moved. So again, these are things that he's done for a long time, so I'm not expecting him to be able to move his head all the way back into the box, but we just want to have it less back. And I'd also like to see him stretch the upper body away from the center and have the stretch pull the head but not slide the hips. So with the hips in the middle here, I think as we go back, what I'd like to see is the movement away from the ball to move his head a little bit. So this is a little bit of a right load without as much movement to the right with the legs. And now in the forward swing, get a little more push, pretty much simply because he didn't go backwards as much. And as he hits it, we're still going to be back here, but maybe a little bit less. And you can see in both cases he produces a pretty good impact, but with the head that far back, club's going to release into the right wrist. It's going to be giving a little bit, maybe a little bit soon. But I like that. I like the sequencing on the backswing there better. All right, so I'm going to shift over to the down the line view. Get rid of the lines. All right. Now, one thing you'll notice right away, and I didn't fix it on this, is that we talked about that after a couple of other swings, that he's got his lower body, it's slightly closed. We just don't want to see we want those lines to line up with the parallel to the target line. So the one on the left here, which is where we started, is a little better actually. So let's go to the slower version of this. Alright, so the thing that we worked on the most from down the line here is the takeaway. So Peter's tendency is to get his right arm a little behind him, get it trapped a little, and then come from the inside. So if we watch the takeaway, we'll see that the handle of the club is going to go slightly this way, and the club slightly that way. And what I've been trying to get going here is with certain players with right arm problems that are getting behind them, is that the right forearm takeaway, where you add extension into the right wrist and have the handle stay up on the plane or maybe go above it a little bit. What happens is the right arm has a tendency from there, instead of flaring, is actually going to stay more in front. Now, if you've been a fan of the website for a long time, you'll note that in the past I've been a little bit more against trying to keep this right arm pinched in front. But what I found with players that have enough upper trunk mobility, that it's a little easier to keep the right arm in a good position in transition if it doesn't flare behind quite as much. So this takeaway, where the handle stays up, so the feeling is that the left arm here won't be quite as in, so we even want to get this a little bit more this way. So this feels like the grip is lifted and the right wrist is bending back, so that's flattening the left wrist a little bit. And as you do this, what you'll find is the right shoulder up here is feeling like it's externally rotating or staying forward, so that the right arm can stay a little bit less behind. So at this point here, we can't see it from down the line as well, but we're looking at how much the arm is in front of the turn as opposed to getting a little bit more behind it. So in the downswing, and as this comes down, you'll see why Pete can really hit the ball. Watch how close this gets to the shaft plane. It's pretty neat. Now remember that Peter's tendency is to have his head drop back a little bit. So if the right arm's behind and the overall feel of the swing is a little bit more arms in, And he has a tendency to release this thing, to let it drop underneath a little and release a little bit more out to the right. So watch the one here on the left. So remember, this entire backswing is going to feel more out in front and then over. And then when it comes down, the hope is that it would feel more like it could come out in front of him, could drive his head more forward, and then have it go around more. So the key point here is going to be right after impact and through. You can see right here where the shaft is. So we have made a little bit of a change in getting the club to arc around a little bit more as opposed to swinging out to the right. And Peter's tendency, his bad shot is always a hook, pretty much. And you can see the other really great things about Peter's swing is how he keeps his hips really nicely in the box with his head out. These are really quality items that you'll see in good players. So this kind of goes along with, if you watch any of the basement tapes, the options that you have in the takeaway, and the one that you choose really has everything to do with the other things that usually happen in your swing. So when we look at that P3 position, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to keep it a little bit more in front of his body at P3. And again, this is a work in progress. So I think you'll see in this picture here versus this one that the difference is going to be in the way the right arm is raised up here and a little bit more down here. And then these things are fairly subtle. So as the right arm moves less deep to finish off the backswing, all the stretches in the left arm, left shoulder, and the trunk. So this is going to come right down. You can see how simple this looks. Not a lot of plane shifting. It's a little bit of a flattening move, which is lagging the club. And as we saw from the front view, Peter's hands get nicely up to the ball. So to me, this pattern change where we route the club a little differently in the back has a big effect on the sensation of matching up on the forward swing and bringing the club around and getting it in front of him. So eventually we're going to get his head not to drop back so much, and I think that's going to make him better. All right.